this presentation, you will learn how the subjunctive is used with certain conjunctions. In Chapter 14, we will be dealing with two different groups of conjunctions and how the subjunctive is used with each one of them. In Spanish, some conjunctions are always followed by the subjunctive. Don't be too concerned if you're not exactly sure what a conjunction is at this point. We're not going to explain what conjunctions are, but what you do need to know is that this group of conjunctions that we are going to look at are always followed by the subjunctive. So it doesn't matter which one of these phrases you use. If you say one of these phrases or write one of these phrases, the verb that you use after it always has to be in the subjunctive form. There's no guesswork involved. You just know that it has to be. The nice thing is we have grouped them into an acronym. There's an acronym, just like we had weirdo in past chapters: want, wish, emotion, request, doubt, and ojalá. We also have an acronym to help you remember what these conjunctions are, and that acronym is the word ESCAPA. So there are 6 conjunctions, and we'll go over them right now. El primero, the first one, el primero, en caso de que. Say it, en caso de que. En caso de que means in case. And whenever you use that expression in Spanish, en caso de que, whatever verb comes after que will always have to be in subjunctive. So once again, you don't have to guess what it is. You just have to decide what form you're going to say. If it's in case you, in case he, in case she, in case it, you have to know the form of the verb you want to use, but it will always be in subjunctive. The next one is the expression sin que, which means without. Sin que. Now we already know the word sin means without, but sin que is without when it's used in front of a verb. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. La próxima expresión es con tal de que. Digan con tal de que. As long as. Con tal de que. Now, each one of those words individually, con tal de que, has its own meaning, but together you put those 4 words together, and that means as long as. Sometimes books will say provided that, but most people just say as long as. So, con tal de que, as long as. Próximo es a menos que. A menos que. A menos que means unless. And you can see the word menos in there, which means less. So a menos que, that will at least help you remember that one. A menos que. So that in Spanish we say para qué. Para qué. Now para means for or in order. And so sometimes you'll even see textbooks that say in order that, but most people just say so that. So para qué, so that. Y por último, antes de que, before. Say it, antes de que. Antes de que means before. Now we know antes or antes de means before, like antes de la clase, antes de mí, before me, but antes de que is used in front of a verb. The first letter of each expression forms the acronym ESCAPA, and ESCAPA is like the word escape. So you remember, this is going to help you remember they don't escape the subjunctive. So these 6 phrases that form the word ESCAPA, they don't escape subjunctive. That means they have to have subjunctive with them. So once again, if you say or write any one of these 6 phrases, the verb after it always has to be in subjunctive. What we're going to do next is look at some sample sentences, and I've left the verb out so that you have a chance to formulate the answer, and I put the verb at the end of the sentence in parentheses in the infinitive form, and I'll give you a chance to decide what the form should be. So, vamos a mirar el primero. Número 1, trae el paraguas en caso de que blank. And we have the verb llover. So, trae el paraguas en caso de que. ¿Qué estamos diciendo? What are we saying? Bueno, trae es el mandato, command, bring. So trae el paraguas. Paraguas significa umbrella. Bring the umbrella in case that, etc. Y el verbo llover significa to rain. So lo que queremos decir es bring the umbrella in case it rains. So en caso de que is our trigger. And we know it's going to trigger subjunctive because doesn't escape subjunctive. So we need the form of llover that would go here? Well, the subject is the word it, because we say bring the umbrella in case that it rains. So we want the it form, which is the same as he, she, or usted. And I'll take you through the steps of the verb llover. Remember, to form subjunctive, we have to take the yo form. Now, the verb llover would actually never be used in the yo form because you don't say I rain. But if it did have a yo form, it would be double L U-E-V-O, lluevo. That llover is a stem-changing verb, and you may wonder, how do I know that? Well, almost every verb in Spanish that has an O in the syllable right in front of the ending is going to be a stem-changing verb. So if there's an O there, you can guess 99 times out of 100 it's going to be stem-changing. So this verb, the E, of course, would change to opposite vowel, which is an A. So we would have as an answer, llueva. Trae el paraguas en caso de que llueva. Bring the umbrella in case it rains. Número 2. No puedo salir sin que mi mamá me blank. Now, what is the S of ESCAPA? It's sin que. What did that expression mean? Without. So what are we saying here? No puedo salir. I am not able or I can't go out without my mom something me. Well, oír means to hear. So I can't go out or I can't leave without my mom hearing me. So we need subjunctive of the verb oír for mamá. Well, oír is also an irregular verb. If you don't remember the yo form of oír, it's oigo, O-I-G-O, oigo. That should help you get the subjunctive then. Oigo, drop off the O. Oír is an IR verb, change it to opposite vowel, that would give us an A. The form that we want for mamá is oiga. No puedo salir sin que mi mamá me oiga. I can't leave without my mom hearing me. Muy bien. Número 3. Con tal de que tú blank estudiando, te voy a pagar la matrícula. ¿Qué significa con tal de que? What does that mean? Well, the C of escapa, con tal de que, means as long as. And then in parentheses, we have the verb seguir, which means to continue or to keep on. So, con tal de que tú, what are we trying to say here? As long as you continue studying, te voy a pagar la matrícula. Matrícula is the word for tuition. So as long as you continue studying, I'm going to pay your tuition. So we want the form of seguir in subjunctive for tú. Y el verbo seguir, the yo form of that is sigo, S-I-G-O. So what would our subjunctive form be? If you said sigas, muy bien. Con tal de que tú sigas estudiando, te voy a pagar la matrícula. Número 4. No vamos a aprobar la clase a menos que blank. So, aquí tenemos la expresión a menos que. That's the A of escapa. A menos que. And what does that mean? Unless. So, no vamos a aprobar. Aprobar significa to pass. To pass, in this case, to pass a class. So, no vamos a aprobar la clase a menos que. So, we are not going to pass the class unless, and of course, we have the verb here to study. Probably what we're saying here is we're not going to pass the class unless we study. So we need subjuntivo del verbo estudiar. Oh, muy fácil. Estudiar es un verbo regular. So, ¿cuál es la forma de estudiar en subjuntivo para nosotros? Estudiemos. Muy bien. So, vamos a repetir la oración. No vamos a aprobar la clase a menos que estudiemos. Muy bien. Número 5. Mi hija tiene que terminar las clases para que blank graduarse. Aquí tenemos la expresión para qué. ¿Qué significa para qué? So that. Aquí queremos decir my daughter has to finish classes so that she can graduate. Así que necesitamos el verbo poder en subjuntivo. So we need poder in subjunctive. and it's reflecting daughter. My daughter has to finish classes so that she can graduate. Well, poder, that should be an easy one. Think of the yo form, drop the o, add the opposite vowel. ¿Cuál es la forma? Pueda. Mi hija tiene que terminar las clases para que pueda graduarse, so that she can graduate. Número 6. Antes de que blank, entrégame la tarea. ¿Qué significa antes de que? Antes de que significa before. So before something, then we have the command form, entrégame la tarea. Entregar means to turn in or hand in. So this person, probably a professor, is saying, before you leave, turn in to me the homework. Irse, remember, ir significa to go, but irse means to go away or to leave. Very common verb in Spanish for leaving. So he's saying to his student, before you leave, turn in to me the homework. So we want irse in subjunctive. Now, because it's reflexive, we need to take the se off and put it in front. And we need to change the word se there because we're dealing with tu. This is the tu form of the verb, so we need to change se to te. And then we want the subjunctive form of ir, which is very irregular. It's the I of the letter dishes, and you remember the dishes are the 6 verbs that have very strange forms in Spanish. Subjunctive. ¿Se acuerdas? ¿Se acuerdan? Do you remember what it is? Muy bien, te vayas. Antes de que te vayas, entrégame la tarea. Before you leave, turn into me the homework. Now, let me make a couple comments about these expressions. In most of these sentences, you can switch the word order, and that won't matter. For example, number 3, con tal de que tú sigas estudiando, te voy a pagar la matrícula. As long as you continue studying, I'm going to pay your tuition. You could turn it around and say, I'm going to pay your tuition as long as you continue studying. Or number 4, no vamos a aprobar la clase a menos que estudiemos. You could turn it around and say, a menos que estudiemos, no vamos a aprobar la clase. Unless we study, we're not going to pass the class. So the order of the clauses can be switched around just like in English they can be. But once again, as long as you use one of these 6 expressions that make up the word ESCAPA, you automatically use a subjunctive verb after each one. So the important thing is you have to memorize these 6 expressions and what they mean. Okay, let's look at the next group of expressions that we have. Some conjunctions may take subjunctive or indicative, but it depends. So with this group of conjunctions we're going to look at, they could go either way. They may be subjunctive or indicative. Now remember, when we say indicative, indicative is regular present tense. That's anything that's not subjunctive. So it'll be either present subjunctive or it'll be regular present indicative that you learned way back in the beginning of Spanish. Well, what's the question or questions that you have to ask yourself? First, you have to ask yourself, is the action habitual? Meaning the action that takes place after one of these expressions. Is it something that goes on all the time? Something that I know that happens? Well, if it's something I know that happens repeatedly, then it wouldn't be subjunctive. It would be indicativo because we know it takes place. But is the action pending? If the action you're going to be referring to is pending, means that that action is still yet to take place, then you're never sure that it's going to happen necessarily because it hasn't happened yet. So something could always happen that would keep this action from taking place. In this case, tiene que ser subjuntivo. So these clauses or these expressions you're about to learn could go either way depending. So once again, you have to ask yourself, is the action that they are introducing something habitual that happens all the time? It's indicativo, indicative. Is the action that we're about to refer to something pending? It's going to be subjunctive. So we'll look at the 4 expressions, and then once we're done with the 4, we'll look at sample sentences. El primero es la palabra cuando. Cuando, you already know, is the word when. And we've used cuando since the beginning of Spanish, but we've never used it in a situation where we've had to use subjunctive with it. But cuando is an expression that could go either way depending on what kind of action you're referring to. Y el asterisco, the little asterisk, is there because cuando does not take the word que with it. It's one of the expressions in Spanish when you want to use subjunctive with it, you don't use the word que. Próximo tenemos la expresión hasta que. Hasta que significa until. And hasta, you already know that means until, like hasta mañana, hasta pronto, hasta la vista. That word means until, but you can also use it in a verbal phrase or a clause, we say, and it may or may not take subjunctive depending on what it means. Próximo, en cuanto. En cuanto significa as soon as. Be careful because it's en cuanto with a T, not en cuando with a D. So you don't want to confuse that. En cuanto. And once again, it doesn't have to have que with it. In fact, you don't use que with it. That's why there's an asterisk. Now, the two words that make it up, en and cuanto, separately mean different things, but when you put those two words together, that is the expression as soon as. And we have another expression that means as soon as, tan pronto como. Tan pronto como. And both of these expressions are used interchangeably for as soon as. You can use either one you want, and neither of them take the word que. Now, the first letter of each expression together form the acronym CHET. And just remember this guy, he has to decide. What does CHET have to do? He has to decide whether he's going to use subjunctive or not, depending on whether the action is habitual, which will be indicative, or is the action being referred to pending, in which case it would be subjunctive. So let's look at some example sentences to see which one we would use. Once again, I'm going to leave the verb out and give you the opportunity to decide what should go there. Número uno, cuando yo blank buenas notas, estoy feliz. Cuando yo blank buenas notas, estoy feliz. Tenemos el verbo sacar. Sacar significa to take out, or in the case of grades, which is what we're talking about here with notas, sacar means to get. Entonces, cuando yo blank buenas notas, estoy feliz. When I get, or that's what we're saying, when I receive, or when I get good grades, I am happy. So, la pregunta, ¿es habitual o pendiente? Is this habitual or is this pending? Well, this refers to something that happens all the time. When I get good grades, I am happy. So we know that this, because it's a habitual thing, we know it happens, we don't need subjunctive here. We just use regular present tense. So la forma yo de sacar es saco. Cuando yo saco buenas notas, estoy feliz. When I get good grades, I'm happy. Número dos. Cuando yo blank mi diploma, voy a conseguir un buen trabajo. What are we saying here? Well, we're still dealing with sacar. Sacar means to take out, but we use it as the verb to get when we're talking about grades and even when we're talking about this case, a diploma. So I'm saying when I get my diploma, I'm going to get a good job. Conseguir is the verb to get, like to obtain something. So when I receive my diploma, I'm going to get a good job. So, así que la pregunta, habitual o pendiente? Habitual or pending? Well, this is not a habitual thing. This is a pending one. And we know that because it says I'm going to get a good job. So we have to use subjunctive with the verb here. Now notice, both of these sentences have the word cuando in them, which is the C of CHET. But the first one is not subjunctive because it's habitual. However, the second one is subjunctive because that action of getting my diploma has not yet occurred. So we need subjunctive of the verb sacar. Well, since sacar is an AR verb, that A will have to change to an E, but we're also going to have to do something with that letter C to make it sound or to look correct, and so we have QU there. Cuando yo saque mi diploma. So notice in number one, when I get good grades, blah, blah, blah. Number two, when I get my diploma, blah, blah, blah. Each of them basically have the same verb in English, get, but in Spanish they're different because the first one is habitual, the second one is pending. Número tres. No puedes jugar hasta que blank de comer. No puedes jugar hasta que blank de comer. Y acabar significa to finish. To finish. So this is probably a parent telling a child or some other kid, No puedes jugar. You cannot play until you finish eating. And we have acabar and then de comer, which is how we say to finish doing something. So, la pregunta, is this habitual or pending? Well, this is a pending situation because they're referring to a future action. You cannot play until you finish. So because this is pending, pendiente, we have to use subjunctive. So we need subjunctive of the verb acabar. And if you've never seen that verb before, it's a regular verb. And because we're talking to a child here, until you finish, what would be subjunctive of acabar? Acabes. No puedes jugar hasta que acabes de comer. Muy bien. You cannot play until you finish eating. Muy bien. Número 4. Nunca empezamos hasta que blank los demás. Ahora, los demás means the rest, like the other people, the rest of the people. That's how we say the rest, los demás, or the others. So we want to say, we never begin until the others and llegares arrive. So the person is saying, we never begin until the others arrive. Well, the question is this talking about something that happens habitually or pending? Well, obviously from the context, it says we never do this, so this is a habitual thing. And because it's something that habitually we don't do, we never begin until the others arrive. This is not subjunctive. So we need llegar in regular present tense, not in subjunctive. So we never begin until the others arrive. And the others is the same as saying they, ellos. So we want the form of llegar in regular indicative, which would be llegan. Nunca empezamos hasta que llegan los demás. Not subjunctive because this is habitual. Número 5. En cuanto blank el abogado, dile que estoy lista. En cuanto. ¿Qué significa en cuanto? Well, the E of CHET, en cuanto, means as soon as. And we have llamar as our verb, and llamar significa to call. Who is el abogado? El abogado is the lawyer. So we're saying as soon as the lawyer calls, tell him that I am ready. Dile, notice our word di, that's our command from last chapter. Dile, tell him that I am ready. Pending or habitual? Well, in this case, this is pending because he hasn't called yet. So en cuanto, and we need llamar in subjunctive to match el abogado, that would be llame. En cuanto llame el abogado, dile que estoy lista. Número 6. Tan pronto como blank el jefe, los empleados dejan de trabajar. As soon as the boss, now we have irse again. Irse significa to leave. As soon as the boss leaves, the employees stop working. So, tan pronto como, another expression that means as soon as, same as en cuanto. Is this a habitual or pending situation? Well, this is talking about something that happens all the time. So this would not be subjunctive. This would be indicative. So we need the verb irse in regular present tense. Well, it's reflexive. We're talking about the employees. So we take the se off, we put it in front. It stays se because that's the pronoun that we use with they, because we're talking about employees, and then we need the form of ir in regular present tense that also goes with they. Muy bien. Tan pronto como se va el jefe, los empleados dejan de trabajar. Okay, so I said employees, but I meant boss. As soon as the boss leaves, the employees stop working. So se va el jefe. That's regular present tense referring to the boss. Okay, so with these 4 expressions, the C is cuando, H hasta que, the E en cuanto, and the T tan pronto como. You have to make a decision whether they're going to use subjunctive or not, depending on the action. Once again, if it's a habitual action, something that you know that happens all the time, you use indicative. If it's an action that's pending, has not yet happened or has yet to take place, then you have to use subjunctive after these expressions. So I hope this explanation of ESCAPA and CHET, 2 groups of conjunctions that can use subjunctive. I hope this has helped you understand. When you go back and you'll read it through the book and do some of the exercises, you'll be understanding now. Muchas gracias por su atención y nos vemos en el próximo video.